Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the canceled The Avengers game, which was being made by THQ to tie into the release of the first Avengers film. Any sources I used I'll have linked in the description for images, videos, and just info about it in general. Real quick before the video starts, I have two special things to announce. Feel free to skip ahead if you don't care. But I'm doing a giveaway, and also I am now starting channel membership. Now, first for the giveaway, I'm currently around, at the time of making this video, I'm at 1,850 subs. If we can get to 2K before the end of the month, I will be doing a $50 giveaway to $25 gift cards to 2 random subscribers. All you have to do is comment below on this video and have a public subscription to the channel. Now, also, I'm starting channel memberships, which, if you don't know what that is, essentially you just pay a certain amount of money a month and you get to become a member of the channel. Now, for my specific channel, you'll get a few different things. You'll get a little badge next to your name in chat and in comments. You'll also get a shout out at the end of every single video, as well as getting to vote in special posts only for members. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started with the actual video. Now, THQ, before working on this game, had done a good handful of Marvel games, multiple being Superhero Squad related, but unlike previous MCU tie-in games by other companies, the game was not based around the film or even set in the MCU. It was an original story inspired by the Secret Invasion event from the comic. Brian Michael Bendis, who wrote the comic book arc, was even brought in to write the game's story. THQ was primarily known for its small budget children tie-in games for Disney and Nickelodeon, as well as other companies, but they have had a handful of original projects of varying success. But this would have been a step into making much better games for the company. It was meant to release on PS3, Xbox 360, Wii U, and Windows. The PS3 and Xbox were the main consoles the game was being developed for, while a whole other company, Blue Tongue Entertainment, worked on the PC port for the game. There were plans to make a Wii U version and have Xbox Connect support, which would have featured an exclusive Avengers Training Academy mode, which would have had the player take control of a rookie superhero to fight alongside the Avengers using motion control, but both were later dropped during pre-production of the game. It would have been an FPB with small FPS elements, which, if you don't know, FPB stands for First Person Brawler. Over the years since its cancellation, we've gotten more and more info and even gameplay of the game. It also would have been single player and multiplayer. There were 8 playable characters, which were all unique, including Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, and Captain America, with Black Widow, Hawkeye, War Machine, and Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers, being unlockable heroes. The idea of having the game be in first person was both to be unique from previous superhero games and make the player feel more like they are these heroes. The game was canceled for one big reason, and that is development cost. THQ had some huge bombs around this time, including the UDraw tablet, which cost the company $100 million due to the failure of UDraw. Along with some other games, THQ needed to cut some costs, and the Avengers game died because of it. And a few years later, THQ declared bankruptcy, though they've slowly started coming back to life as THQ Nordic. Earlier in the game's development, the game was much less ambitious, but 6 months into development, a handful of devs, including a lead, were fired and replaced, and the game became a first-person game in an effort to be more unique, as no other Marvel game has ever been first-person before this. Now, from here, I'm going to split the video into 4 sections. Feel free to use the chapters to skip around as you please. First is what you've already watched, the history of why it didn't release and its basics. Next is the story. Third, its gameplay features, and lastly, everything else. Story. As mentioned previously, Brian Michael Bendis was writing the story for this game, and it would have featured the Avengers fighting the Skrulls. The story was fairly finished. Basically a Skrull invasion, a huge mothership hovering over the city, controlled by priests, which sat in the highest level. Varanki, along with various generals, headed the Skrull forces. One of the Skrull objectives was to enslave all superheroes and mimic their powers by shapeshifting. The Skrulls' power sets included the Avengers, Fantastic Four, and X-Men. This would have been an altered take on the Skrulls in contrast with the comic storyline, which depicted the villains masquerading themselves as world leaders to stealthily gain control of the planet's political infrastructure. This was set to be a more bombastic conquest for the invaders. One planned sequence would have seen them destroying the Baxter Building, HQ of the Fantastic Four, using a negative zone portal to remove them from humanity's line of defense. The game would have had Spider-Woman appear in earlier parts of the game, and at a later point in the campaign, it would have then turned out that this was actually Varanki, Queen of the Skrull Empire in disguise. This would have been revealed during an intense interrogation by Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., which caused her to reveal herself. The game's story mode would have had the Avengers on an adventure around the globe, spanning a variety of significant locations from the comics, including S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Triskelion base, Manhattan, and the Helicarrier, as well as the interiors of enemy spaceships. A chapter set in the Savage Lands was planned early on but was later abandoned. This game was meant to be a first-person game, making it very different from other Marvel games, as they've basically all been a variation of third-person. I'm going to go over each hero and tell you what they would have been able to do in the game. Note that any gameplay shown was a very early build of the game, and later versions of the game have not been found. Supposedly a partially finished version of the game is being held by Brian Michael Bendis. Iron Man would have been able to fly, use repulsors, and punch enemies. His 3 specials included auto locked-on rockets, an energy shield buff that shields him and allies, and a mine that would attach to enemies and explode when hit. Thor, like Iron Man, could fly, as well as throw his hammer. He also had basic melee attacks with his hammer as well. His first ability summons lightning on enemies. I'm unsure of what his second ability would have been able to do, but his final ability would have shot a electrified tornado from his hand. Hulk uses his strength to do powerful jumps in the game. He could have clapped multiple enemies from a distance, as well as picked up and thrown enemies, and also had normal melee attacks as well. His first ability was a stomp attack. His second seems like some sort of buff, possibly a strength buff. His third was a powerful super punch. Cap seems to have a fast blocking sprint, as well as melee attacks, and could throw his shield. He also seems to have some sort of slide attack that's been shown, though this could have possibly been for other heroes as well. His first special was a ricocheting shield throw. His second seems like some sort of buff, but I can't tell what. And his third ability seems to mark enemies, possibly debuffing them. The remaining heroes who were meant to be unlockable were in early production, so we don't know what they would have played like. We do have some later footage which looks much better and shows enemies being much more reactive to attacks, more finished environments, finisher attacks, as well as teamwork elements. Some heroes' attacks would knock enemies into the air, allowing other heroes to finish them off, basically alley-oop. These heroes were designed to be unique from each other. While Iron Man heavily made use of projectiles like cluster missiles and could fly around stages, Hulk was slightly slower but packed a much bigger punch than the other heroes, taking down larger foes with ease in close quarters. Thor possessed a potent stun ability in the form of summoning large bolts of lightning and could hurl his hammer for a powerful long-range attack. Captain America, lastly, was the more grounded of the 4. His melee combat was much quicker than the others, and he could throw his shield for an easy kill. Every character was being built with a plethora of finisher moves, deadly attacks that would pull the camera back to third person for a cinematic view, as your Avenger of choice lay waste to opponents in style. These could be initiated either in the air or on the ground, with ample variety to keep repetition to a minimum. An XP system was planned as well, as a means of upgrading and unlocking new abilities. Players would gain XP constantly based upon their actions, whether it was assisting a teammate in battle, racking up kills, or destroying enemy weapon caches. There would have been areas with gates where players were locked into an area for a period of time, having to solve problem or survive an onslaught of enemies. One was a King of the Hill style mode where scrolls were placing multiple beacons around an area that the players had to coordinate to disrupt before they reached critical mass. Super Scrolls would have been able to grab heroes as well, and your team would need to use an interrupt attack to free you. Hero AI. The team had designed a sophisticated AI system to make sure that even if you weren't playing it with others, you would still have a comparable experience that would channel the essence of teamwork at the heart of the Avengers. Extensive periods of tweaking were applied throughout development to achieve an intelligent computer-controlled counterpart, which included rebuilding it at one point to make the computer allies seem more human. This meant lowering their accuracy by a very slight degree, whilst also ensuring they were adequately responsive to combo opportunities. The Scrolls. It seems there would have been at least 3 different types of Super Scrolls in the game. One based off of the Fantastic Four, one off the X-Men, and one on the Avengers with powers based on the members of each. It also would have had multiple different types of basic Scrolls, including commanders and normal soldiers, as well as some sort of priests, which I don't know what that could have been. Maybe those would have been some sort of bosses as well. Other Marvel characters meant to appear included Ant-Man, Vision, and Ultron, though we don't know what their roles would have been in the story or gameplay-wise. In the main menu mockups, you can see a DLC icon, meaning it was possible that DLC was on the table at one point, though we don't have any information on what that would have been. So it turns out, after a little bit more research while making this video, that at least one of the DLCs planned to come for the next year would have added PvP. And there was also a planned skin pack, including Avengers film skins and Skrull Avengers skins. In one concept art, you can see Hydra soldiers and Baron Zemo, but we don't know what that was for. It could have just been a random art piece they threw together. Now, one last thing, when THQ cut funding for the game, the dev team attempted to get more funding from Marvel, and Marvel said no, which in my opinion is and was a huge mistake. I mean, the Avengers film did amazing, and there was no game to capitalize on that success. And it seems like this game would have been good on top of being an easy bestseller because of the film. Also, when the game originally lost a lot of its team members, before that point, it was actually meant to be a third-person game, which maybe would have been better. Maybe it would have been easier to create and wouldn't have gotten canceled. That obviously did not happen. Anyways, well, that's basically everything we know about the game. If you want to look at the gameplay that has been leaked for the game, as well as a lot of the concept art, you can check out the links in the description where I have my sources, which have a lot more of stuff that was not included in the video. If you did enjoy, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.